Yay. All right. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are so glad to have you here at the Writer's Bridge. We are going to go ahead and get started in just a moment. I'm just popping people in from the waiting room. If you are just joining us, please do go ahead and weigh in the chat. Where are you coming in from? What are you working on today? Remember, everybody, you can use the More button with the three dots to go ahead and activate the captions for yourself so that you can see the captions as you need them to. We are so glad to have you. Welcome to the Writer's Bridge. So today we are going to talk about Authentic Platform and how Authentic Platform is your literary community. It is not something that you just build to launch a book or to promote. It is something that is part of your ongoing writing career all the time. And we have with us an amazing guest who is going to talk to you about what she does for literary community and what you can do for literary community. But first, a brief message from our sponsor. As you saw in the message with the invite to this month's Writer's Bridge, I have a Saturday morning webinar coming up in October. I'm teaming up with agent Amy Collins, who some of you know from social media. She is super supportive of writers at all stages, and we are going to be talking about revision. And I've got to say, I am currently in Toronto, where I am teaching a small private retreat to 4 wonderful writers. We did an exercise today with plotting dramatic structure and then going, okay, now how does that actually affect the scenes that are in your book, and how do you apply this dramatic structure knowledge to help you finish the book? Not just know what order scenes are supposed to be in, but what those scenes are supposed to do in the book and how you edit it. So I am super excited about a new lesson plan. I will also let you know that coming up later this week is a free memoir summit. It's offered by Janelle Hardy, who is one of our own Writer's Bridge people. It's called Dirty, Messy, Alive, and it is 4 days of short take webinars. Like, the webinars are all about 30 minutes long, super, super easy, super quick, lots of different topics. I've dropped the link into the chat. Now, this is a great way for you to check out teachers if you may be considering somebody's classes and you want to like test it out and go, hey, do I actually like this teacher? Is this something I really want to do? Or if you yourself teach, this is a great opportunity to check out other teachers, see what they're doing, see whose style you like, see whose style you don't care for. You go, oh man, this is not how I would teach this at all. Or, oh wow, that is a great way to do it. Or, I love how that person organized their slides. You can drop in anytime during the 4 days. And if you want, when you click that link that I have dropped into the chat to go and register, you get access to everything for free. If you want recordings, there's an upsell where 3 hours after you buy for that first 3 hours, it's like $85. After the first 3 hours, the price jumps. So do have an idea in mind. Are you going to be wanting to spend $85 to get the recordings and the templates and all that stuff? But the primary event is free, and you can drop in and out as you wish. I have dropped the link into the chat. It is a great chance to check out teachers. And now, our Writer's Bridge. I am so psyched at our guest today. She is someone who I admire. I think her career is amazing. I first met her years ago at the Hippocamp Creative Nonfiction Conference and have followed her amazing books, her amazing writing. She's also a fantastic teacher and a fantastic coach. Lilly Dancyger is the author of First Love, Essays on Friendship, and Negative Space, which is a beautiful memoir that also has a visual component. She lives in New York City. She is a 2023 Artist Fellow in Nonfiction from the New York Foundation for the Arts. And her work has appeared in The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Rolling Stone, Playboy, Elle, Long Reads, Brevity, and a whole lot more. She has a great Substack called The Word Cave, and you can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Lilly Dancyger. And note that Lilly has 3 L's in it, 2 in the middle and 1 on the beginning. So welcome, Lilly. Let's give a little jazz hands round of applause. Yay.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Allison. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Lilly, congratulations. You recently brought out First Love, Essays on Friendship. Will you tell us a little bit about that book before we dive into our main topic?
Sure. Yeah, it came out in May. First Love. It's a collection of personal essays. I call them personal slash critical essays, because they're narrative from my life about like my closest friends from, you know, childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, but they're also cultural criticism talking about different elements of just what it means to be a woman in the world, from, you know, the way that the sad girl is aestheticized to what mothering means, you know, beyond the context of having children. There's an essay in there about true crime. And yeah, it's kind of a playground for form. There's a lot of, you know, braided essays, flash essays, personal narrative essays. Yeah, that's first love.
And Lilly, because we get this question a lot, your book, First Love, it does contain work you've previously published elsewhere. Is that correct? Is
Just
it?
two. Yeah, two pieces were previously published. Most are original to the book. Yeah.
What's the advice you would give people in terms of publishing stuff that they later want to use in a book? What's your position on that? How much should we publish if we're going to put it in a book? Does it matter? Does it help us? What do you think?
Yeah, I urge restraint on that front for sure. With my first book, Negative Space, which was a memoir, that took a lot longer. You know, I worked on that book for over a decade, and for most of that time, I thought the book was done or almost done or about to be done, you know, so I was always kind of trying to get it out into the world. And one way that I was doing that was publishing excerpts, hoping to catch, you know, an agent's eye. And I ended up publishing way too much of that book ahead of time, which came back to bite me when I finally actually was getting the book published and needed to publish some excerpts, you know, for publicity around the book launch. But like a bunch of the best kind of standalone sections had already been published years before, when they were not going to be of any use to me, in publishing, in you know, promoting the book. And I think especially with essays where there are such distinct units, you know, I think there's 13 or 15 essays, I can't remember now, around that many in First Love. And so if seven of those have existed on the internet already, then there's less incentive for anybody to buy the book, you know? And even when it came to excerpts around publication, sorry if you can hear that siren in the background, I'm in New York City.
Hooray, New York! That's okay. I've got drilling in the basement of the building
Yeah,
I'm in Canada,
it
so
was
it's
just
all
getting
good.
louder and louder as it was talking. I'm sure they can hear this. But yeah, even like around publication, my publisher was very conservative about how many excerpts to publish, because they want the work to exist in the book, you know, and they want people to have to go buy the book if they want to read the pieces. So yeah, when people are working on a manuscript and eager to get published, I tell them to, you know, practice the art of delayed gratification and just resist that urge for the quick endorphin hit of publication and hold on to that work for the book and publish something else instead.
So I love that because I have advised people in the past, you know, don't publish everything in your book because it is going to help you have more readers if they haven't already read it. But, you know, it's also proof of concept to some extent for publishers. But it sounds like we should be publishing other essays that maybe are tangentially related to our topic, or maybe it's that great story that we've realized, oh, this doesn't belong in this manuscript after all, and instead save those so that we can publish them around publication time.
Yeah, that's what I usually recommend. And I say, you know, when publishing adjacent work, you know, what I recommend to my students usually is that it can be, you know, other work that shares kind of some subject matter or topic focus with your book, but it can also be work that's like stylistically representative of your work and your book, even if it has nothing to do with the topic of your book at all. Agents and editors and all of those people, right? They want to see who you are as a writer and they want to see your work in the world. You don't have to be this one note, right? Where like you're written a book about one topic, so that's all you're allowed to talk about forever. I feel like people kind of get into that mindset sometimes. Where like, okay, now I have to become a quote unquote subject matter expert and just keep beating this drum. But I, you know, I got my agent who is still my agent, and she's wonderful, and she's who represented me for First Love. She approached me because of a column that I wrote for Catapult about female villains in pop culture, which really has nothing to do with my book, but she just it shared kind of a sensibility, a style, a voice, and that's what she was into, and that led to the book. So
I love that. I really love that. Yeah. And publishing is one of the ways that we get noticed, one of the ways that we create community. We have one additional question on this from Kathy in the chat. If we publish an essay with a small section of our story, how seriously should we take the issue about the publication owning rights to the work? And now, as Jan also points out, most journals have only limited use. They buy first North American rights, which means it's yours ever after. But one of the things we've noticed lately, particularly with places like Narratively, I believe Huffington Post's contract has also expanded, where they want the rights to your story. And they specifically say, we want to be able to make movies out of this. We want to be able to make a Netflix series out of this. How much should we worry about that, Lilly?
I would worry about it. I take it very seriously, if you see the phrase, well, okay, yeah, there's a couple different elements here, but if you see the phrase work for hire in a contract, that means that you no longer own that work at all. The publication has bought not just the rights to publish it, but they have bought the work and they own that work. I try on principle to just never sign anything that says work for hire in it. Even if it's not work that I'm ever going to use again, I just want to own all of my own work just in case, right? I want to have the right to use it as I want to. And that usually, I've said exactly that to editors before, say, I don't sign work for hire contracts. Can we please amend this to first serial?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And most of the times they say yes. Once in a while they say no, and then I have to make the decision of how badly do I want this publication or not. Um,
And I
yeah,
think, go ahead. Go ahead, Lilly.
and just yeah, as for these contracts that are becoming more common recently, where you're signing away kind of adaptation rights as well. That can be very tricky because when you're publishing a book, the book contract usually includes something about that licensing right, story, sub rights, licensing, adaptation, etc. And so if another publication already owns part of those rights, that can prevent you from being able to sign a book contract, or even if they'll work with you and amend the book contract, it can prevent you from getting an adaptation deal and like getting your book turned into a movie, which do you really want to sacrifice that for the $150 you got to publish an essay? So, a lot of those outlets, they're getting to be more sticklers about it, but a lot of those outlets, if you say, hey, this essay is related to the subject matter of a book that I'm working on, I can't sign this contract with this clause in it, please remove it. Some of them will, but it's always worth asking. When you get a contract from a publication, consider it like an opening of a negotiation. It's not like take it or leave it usually.
And that ties into something that I think we all need to remember, which is that any publishing deal, whether it is a 6-figure 5-book deal that's going to make the rest of your career, or $50 because you wrote a column for the local newspaper, and everything in between, you are not a supplicant and they are not bestowing legitimacy upon you. You are a craftsperson and a writer who is able to share your work with the world. And if one place wants it, other places are going to want it too. Or you will be able to reach your audience yourself without the intermediary of another place. Yes, you want to be kind, you want to be respectful, you want to be a good professional colleague, but you are not a supplicant who is grateful for any publication attention. You are a craftsperson who is entering into a deal with another person or another business because you mutually have something of value to offer, as Deepa points out in the chat. It is an exchange. You are a partner, not a supplicant. Now, mind you, it often feels like we are supplicants because there are so many of us and so few agents, so few publishers. but trust that you're going to reach your audience. It's going to be okay. It may be the traditional path, it may be a different path, but we're going to talk today about all the ways that you can reach your audience and all the ways that you can build that supportive community that helps you know your value. How about that segue? Hey, Lilly, what is platform?
Yeah. So, okay, I have a lot of issues with the term platform, and the way that it's talked about, and this emphasis on, writers need a platform in order to get published, which comes up especially with memoirists, but I think is relevant for fiction writers also. But I think it's a bit of a misnomer, right? Like the word platform evokes like an image of a person on a stage, kind of, right? Like holding court to an audience, where it's very unidirectional, right? Like you are putting stuff out and this whole audience is receiving it. That's not really how this business works, right? Or how this field works. I think thinking about it in terms of network or community is much more accurate and realistic to what people are actually looking for and what we should be trying to build. And it's also, I don't know, more attainable, more possible to do it in an organic, natural way, right? Like, it's not about just adding people's names to your newsletter mailing list, right? And having people who are going to receive whatever you're pumping out. It's about having people who are going to be excited to see that you're doing something new, and the people who are going to be excited to see that you're doing something new are people who are invested in you and who you have a relationship with, right? And where that excitement is going in both directions, right? You're excited when they have new work, you share each other's stuff.
And Lilly, that's why we're called the Writer's Bridge, because when Ashley and I first did this for the very first time, we were like, a platform is a thing that you stand on and yell at people from. A bridge is a two-way street. You reach your readers, they reach you. And Dawn describes it in the chat as your network is who you know and your platform is who knows you. Keep going, Lilly. Keep going on this.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So, if you think about it in terms of like what's, I guess the most kind of tangible and pinned down that a writer's quote unquote platform or network will ever be is in like the marketing and publicity section of a book proposal, right? And that's where an agent will be like, okay, list everybody you know, every connection you have, everybody who might blurb the book, everybody who might mention it in their newsletter, everybody who might do an event with you, everybody who might review it, et cetera, right? And so sitting down to write a marketing section is a really good exercise in taking that inventory of like, okay, what are the connections that I've built, right? But when I sat down to write my marketing section, it wasn't like, oh, who's my audience? It was, who are my friends? Right? Who are the people I know? Who am I in community with? Who could I text and say, hey, I'm doing an event in your city. Will you come do it with me? Not as like oh, please do me a favor, but as like hey, friend, I'm coming to your city. You want to do this fun thing with me? And I think that's just a much healthier way to think of it. A lot of writers are kind of socially awkward weirdos, right? And whenever I hear from, yeah, I mean, same, me too, right? But I hear from so many writers like, oh, I don't know, I can't network, right? Like I just can't, right? And I don't know how to, I can't talk to people. I can't self-promote. I can't do all this. It's like, I always take that with a grain of salt. Of like, I don't think it really comes naturally to anybody to want to walk into a room with a bullhorn and be like, here's who I am, buy my book, right? But if you're doing it in this more organic way of like going to events to support authors whose work you like and introducing yourself, not because you want something from them, but because you want to know them, right? And because you're interested in their work. Chatting with the people in the audience, not because you think maybe they have something to offer you, but because you're trying to be part of a community, right? I think about it in terms of like what I can give, what I can put out, how I can support, and it's like this karmic bank kind of, right? So when I'm doing favors for other authors, or I'm promoting their work, or I'm doing events with them, or I'm blurbing their books, it's not because I'm keeping a balance sheet of like expecting a favor back from that person in particular. It's that I'm putting out that energy, right? I'm being the supportive, cooperative community member so that I will hopefully feel a little less guilty and awkward when it's my turn and I have to ask for favors of other people, right? Not going back to those same people and being like, well, I did this for you, so you do this for me, but just in a more kind of general community-based way.
Yeah, I call it making deposits in the bank of goodwill.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily going to withdraw from the same people you deposited to. Allison Lane points out in the chat, who cares about the same stories, solutions, and perspectives as you do? That's the community you want to be a part of, because in the long run, you're not in it for the purpose of a transaction. You're in it because you're part of a community. And the more you can help people without worrying about reciprocity, it's not that that exact person is going to pay you back. It's that somebody looks and goes, oh, yeah, I should support Lilly because I see her supporting so many other writers out there. Or even just your presence is in front of people because you're supporting other people's work. KT asks in the chat, there's a writer or two where I've shared their work extensively without any reciprocation. They never share mine, even when I send it to them personally. And KT feels like they view her as a subordinate or a fan versus a colleague, and yet they are good friends. So KT is not talking about someone super famous and inaccessible. So I would say that for me, some of it is like, I'm already looking around and going, okay, I'm reading this great book by an author named Roz Morris. She and I are connected on social media. She wrote a great novel. I'm enjoying it a lot. I know I mean to review her book, and I have not gotten a chance to yet because I've been teaching, I've been traveling. And so I think some of it is recognize that everybody's at a different place in their ability to give at this time. But Lilly, what do you do? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were giving and not getting back and you decided you needed to stop giving?
I mean, I don't know. I really try not to keep track of it that way. You know, like if I share work that I like and that I'm excited about and that I want to share. And so for me, that is its own practice, right? And it's like I'm just spreading the word about stuff that I'm excited about. And if I end up connecting with that author, or if I'm already friends with them and or whatever, and they want to share my work too, awesome. If not, somebody else will, right? But I really try not to kind of keep track of like who owes what. Because it leads to this kind of like disappointment, right? Of feeling like you're being shafted by somebody. But B, I don't like to be on the other side of that either, right? Like if somebody shares my work and then I get this feeling from them that now they feel like I owe them something, that's going to honestly have the opposite effect. Like if somebody shared my work and then they emailed me like, hey, here's my latest piece, right? Or like DM'd me like, hey, can you share this? And I got this feeling that they felt like I owed them. I'm enough of a stubborn person that I would probably then never share that person's work just out of spite. So, I would say just share what you're excited about and try not to keep track of that one-to-one feeling.
And I'm going to say in a cold, hard, cynical way, when someone sends me a DM or a message and is like, hey, can you share this piece I wrote? I'm kind of like, why? Why should I? What's relevant about it for my audience? What makes me share work for other people is I see a quote from it online and I go, ooh, I agree with this. Or they've posted something and they've tagged me to say, hey, Allison, I started writing this in your workshop. Or, hey, Allison, I think this intersects with this topic you were talking about the other day. Or, hey, Allison, this directly contradicts the thing I learned from you. Do you have anything to say about it? Like, it's not just, please share this because I want you to like me, or I think you should like me. It's share this because it will feed your audience the way it has fed my audience. And I would like it to feed your people as well as sharing it with my people. So it's more of a feeling of expansion. Sorry, go ahead, Lilly.
I just to say, I not as much anymore since Twitter is like half dead, but I used to get those requests all the time, like DMs from people who I either didn't know at all or like maybe had interacted with once, and just this like, hey, can you share this thing like this feeling of kind of entitlement, like, oh, you have X number of followers, so you owe me something somehow. I don't know. It just always was kind of like a gross feeling. And I always just wanted to be like, this isn't a radio station. You know, I'm not taking requests. This is my feed and I'm going to share what strikes me organically. So yeah, just to agree with you, I never like those direct requests personally.
Yeah. And so how does this work for you? And let's get nitty gritty here, Lilly. What do you do in terms of your actual daily routine that you consider to be building part of this community? Like what are the specific actions that you take that you believe build community, whether they are organic actions for you or whether you go, okay, today I need to spend 5 minutes on Twitter, you know, or whatever it is that you do?
Yeah. Um, yeah, let's see. Well, part of it is like posting books that I'm reading, you know, and tagging authors. And also essays too. Like I try to, this is something I forget a lot, and then I kind of do it in bursts, you know, because I'm just in my own world and I'm reading and I'm enjoying stuff. And then once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I haven't posted, you know, whatever X in a while, and I'll go and post like a stack of books that I read recently. Part of it is, you know, I get a lot of like blurb requests that I can't always fulfill, but I'll always say like, hey, I might not get to it, but if you want to send me the arc, I'll post it, you know, and I'll at least say like, hey, I just got this arc. That feels like that's the least I can do, you know. I might not be able to read it, I might not be able to blurb it, but I can like tell the world it exists. You know, and I think that's a big part of it, is like, what can you actually commit to realistically? I feel like my newsletter is community building also, you know. It's I write stuff that's interesting to me, you know. I'm doing this, I guess it's a series. I think of it as a column, even though it's my newsletter, not a publication, but it's a series about you know, going to museums and thinking about writing while looking at visual art. And it's because that happened organically, because that always happens to me, right? I see a piece of art and it connects to something that I'm working on. But I think like sharing process, talking about how I think about art, trying to like lift the curtain a little bit is community building also. Also just like talking, you know, trying to share. I really especially as like a working class writer who came into this world without the connections and the, you know, the this and the that, and had to really build all that myself and learn by trial and error. I try to be very transparent about my process in writing, but also just in the publishing world, right? Like what I've done and how it's worked and who I've met and what, you know. Just trying to be very open about what has worked for me and not worked, and not buy into this like scarcity mindset of like, oh well, I had to figure it out for myself, so everybody else should too. It's like, no, I had to figure it out. I took the long road. Here's the shortcut. Like, you know, now that I'm in the building, let me open this back door for people. So that kind of like openness. And I try to go to, you know, I try to go to events and readings. I kind of have an unofficial quota for myself of like at least one literary event a month that I'm not directly involved in. Which I know, you know, is easier in New York than some places, but most big cities, if you have a local bookstore, they're probably doing some literary events. You know, they're free. You don't even have to buy the book. Just like show up and be in the audience and be engaged, and maybe ask a question and say congratulations at the end. It goes a really long way toward making that experience feel successful and feel good for the author. So I try and do that.
And Anne points out in the chat, local libraries often have literary events, colleges, and Deepa points out online events count too. Those of you who know me, you know that most of the time I live in Dubai. The rest of the time I kind of live on the road. Next year I'm moving to Portugal, where many of the literary events will not be happening in my language. So almost all of the things that I do are online, but there's still a way to actively build community online. And I'm retroactively analyzing this, which is, so Jan Pretty's here. I love Jan, and I love Jan because whenever the Brevity blog is posted, Jan almost always leaves a comment. It's usually something helpful, something that affirms the author and helps them feel good about what they wrote. So I watch Jan boosting other authors by interacting with what they wrote. And so I just like reflexively typed in the chat, Jan, nice to see you. Loved your comment on Brevity this morning. People like it when you recognize their contribution. Now, Jan is not thinking to herself, because I know Jan's an awesome person. Jan is not thinking to herself, aha, Allison has recognized my presence. Tick. Instead, we are genuinely recognizing that it is pleasant to see each other in the world. Jan takes the time to leave the comment that says, I liked your work. And I take the time to say, Jan, I saw what you did there and it was nice. It really can be that simple. There is not a secret extrovert code where it magically comes naturally to some people and it doesn't magically come naturally to other people. Some of it is recognizing that tiny impulse in your heart to say, yes, I see you, and to act on that impulse. And we often have this tendency to go, oh, well, they're not going to care what I think. Why does it matter what I have to say? Oh, they're probably going to get 100 comments. It doesn't matter if I comment or not. Well, what if I'm embarrassed by what if I say? Or what if somebody thinks I said something wrong? Always honor that impulse in your heart to recognize other people. And just starting from that little moment of, good job, nice work. Let me retweet that thing you said. Let me comment on your Facebook post. Let me like your Facebook post. Even just those little tiny moments are us practicing reaching out in small ways to build those communal moments. Now, if you have to, if you are a deeply socially awkward person, and right here, deeply socially awkward, you can make yourself a little list. I want to leave 3 comments on Facebook today, or I want to spend 10 minutes reviewing the books I bought recently and do that on Amazon. You can set a timer or make a list if it does not come naturally. But I promise you, if you regularly honor that impulse in your heart to reach out, even when you're afraid, it will start to come more naturally, and it will actually build your confidence, which works you up to the stage of eventually asking for the big favors you need when your own book comes out. Lilly, weigh in on that.
100%. Yeah, I think it's like, it's just little rewiring, like one of them was seeing, when people share their book announcements or like their link to pre-order or whatever, when they share stuff like this on Twitter and Instagram, and I used to just hit like, and think that was like, okay, here's my goodwill, and then I realized it's so easy. The button to share it is right there. Like, just share it instead, and literally that takes no extra effort. It costs me nothing, but it helps them spread the word, right? And it's kind of a more genuinely celebratory thing, right? Of like, I'm happy for this person. I want the world to know about their book. I want people to pre-order their book or whatever it is, right? And same goes for standalone like essays, articles, whatever. But I think, having been on the other end of it and like feeling like I'm shouting my pre-order link into the void and like feeling like I'm being so annoying of sharing it over and over again and having to just swallow that feeling of like, well, just do it anyway. You have to do it anyway. And seeing what a relief it feels like when people engage with that in any kind of way or share it at all. I just try and remember that feeling and, give back.
And Laura mentions in the chat, it's interesting how online community builds over many months. Laura started following Lilly long before First Love was published and watched how she engages with the writing community in so many ways. Laura loved being able to read Lilly's off-book pieces as she posted the links and was excited to see her here at the Bridge. And thus, here she is. And she thanks us for being literary citizens, which takes me to a question from Cheryl in the chat, which is, how do you know how much is enough? So what Cheryl means is, what matters most is whose lives are changed by your book. What makes you feel like you've been successful enough in that effort to reach readers? How do you know, Lilly?
I mean, I guess the upside and the downside is that there's no such thing as enough. I don't think I will ever get to a point of like, okay, I'm done, right? Like I have reached the top of the mountain, and I am the author I always wanted to be. There's always more, room to grow, room to build, new readers to reach, and that's kind of, that makes it exhausting, but it also is what makes it like exciting and engaging and worth continuing to do, right? Is this idea that there's always room to grow. I think the way to avoid feeling totally overwhelmed and burnt out by that fact is to like acknowledge when you reach a new milestone, right? Acknowledge when something goes well, when you reach a goal along the way, when you achieve something, when you really connect with somebody, when you hear from a reader. Like I save, in an email folder, I save all the like nice emails that readers send me, and to just like, I have that archive. I might never go back and read it, but it exists there as like a record, so I'm not starting from zero all the time. There's always further to go, but that doesn't mean I haven't already accomplished a lot.
I find too that it comes and goes in waves. So like, for example, I heard from somebody the other day that in the process of helping edit her book, she was able to reconcile with an estranged parent because the editorial process of let's look at this person as a character helped her reevaluate the estranged parent's behavior in a way that actually let her reconcile with the parent before the parent passed away. And I'm like, okay, my work here is done. My editorial life is over. There is not much that will top that. And that beautiful feeling will last for about 24 hours. And then it's time to go out and do some more. It really never is, okay, I can stop now. But there are days when the glass gets topped up, which makes up for the days when the glass is a little bit more empty. This brings us to Kate's question. What's the balance between sharing our personal self and our writer self? Kate says, what if you don't write personal biographical stuff, but you want to build connection? So those of us who are writing fiction, those of us who are writing romance or science fiction or fantasy or werewolf erotica or whatever it is we're writing, how do we meet our community without sharing what might be shared in a memoir?
Yeah, I think that striking that balance, I try and have 2 times as much that's just me, like two me posts for every one promotional post, ish. I don't like keep track on a chart, but that's kind of the balance I'm aiming for. Because I think when people are following you and becoming invested in you as a person and becoming your network, right, and your friends and your connections and your community, they don't want to just be advertised to, right? They don't want to just get the kind of like, buy my book, come to this event. By the way, don't forget to buy my book. Like this gets very tiresome, right? But if you're sharing yourself authentically, and that, right, that has nothing to do with whether you're writing memoir or fiction, right? It's just like post about whatever you did that day, post about what you're reading, post about your life. That doesn't mean you have to overshare or post everything you have for lunch or post like your medical problems or whatever, right? But just like be a human being, share what you're thinking about, what you're interested in, what made you laugh today, whatever. If you're a human, right? Then when those people who are following you as a human see, oh yeah, hey, did you buy my book yet? They might go, oh yeah, right, this person, my friend, I should buy her book. And that'll be much more effective than if it's just like a constant stream of advertising.
I agree. And I think a lot of it is, it's not so much advertising as reminding people you exist, because our attention is pulled in so many directions. It's nice to see somebody's name pop up on the screen. And then you go, oh crap, I meant to review their book. Or, oh man, I've been meaning to call my library and ask for them to stock that book. And it's making ourselves a small presence in other people's lives. Joy has a really great perspective in the chat. Joy says, I was a lurker for a long time and justified it to myself because I have a full-time non-writing job and I'm screen fatigued by the end of most days. Didn't have it in me to interact in even the smallest ways. But Joy says, when I turned that around, when I chose to let my writing life start to take precedence with my energy and online time, instead of seeing it as draining me, the community began to nurture me in the places I most need so I can continue to be creative and do this difficult job of coming back to the empty or messy page day after day. I'm inspired every day now, even if it's just 5 minutes on Facebook or Substack, and I like and comment naturally without it feeling like another job. That is kind of how I feel as well. Go ahead, Lily.
Just as yeah, that's great. It does. I think it might feel like work at first, right? If you're not used to it and you're trying to get yourself more in the groove, and you have to remind yourself, or you might have to like do it more intentionally. Like, okay, I have to post about what I'm reading today, or I have to comment on 2 Substacks or whatever. But it does eventually become automatic, and then yeah, and can be fulfilling and inspiring and nourishing and all that good stuff.
I agree. I very much agree. And Deepa phrases it as people will always respond more authentically and warmly to the human behind the enterprise and not the enterprise itself. Show the human behind the writing. And so that's what I'd say too, for people who are writing in a particular genre. Part of what you're going to do for your community is be aware of what's coming out right now in your genre. What is being talked about as trends in the writing of your genre? Can you participate in those discussions? Or even just, hey, this is what my day is like, and I'm choosing to share the parts that I'm choosing to share, just to be a human and be present in the world. Lily, have you seen, can you think of any specific times when your community has really helped you, when you really feel like you have been the benefit of all those deposits in the bank of goodwill and now it's time to get some back?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just had a book come out in May, which is like, I don't think you really realize from the outside just how many favors you need when you're publishing a book, and like just how much of that goodwill you need to draw from. And it's hard. It's embarrassing. I hate asking for help. I hate asking for favors. I hate it, right? But you have to do it, right? And it didn't feel quite as terrible as it might have, because I knew that I had helped others plenty, right? And like I underneath that kind of anxious, like, oh, I don't want to feeling was like a deeper feeling of like, this is fine. Everybody has to do it. You've shown up for people, people will show up for you. And they really did, I mean, the people who blurbed the book and who did events with me and who like shared it on social media and like, all of that, I felt the love for sure. Felt very supported by my community in putting the book out, and felt like celebrated in an authentic way, where like I knew people were genuinely happy for me, which felt really nice, right? And I knew that it was largely because I've been a person who's been present in the community, and that I'm always trying to be a supportive and a connecting figure, and offer advice and share people's work and whatever, right? So there was a feeling of like, and a couple people actually said like, oh, it's great to see you, sharing your own work. I know you're always sharing other people's work. So that helped kind of tamp down that anxious feeling of like, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to promote myself. I don't want to, God, everybody must be so sick of me. You just have to kind of push through those feelings.
And I think, so Patricia's quoting artist coach Beth Pickens, remember that our asks are in service to the book and not ourselves. We want to give our books a fair chance to connect with the people who will need them. Whether they need the inspiration of a memoir, whether they need the entertainment of your YA science fiction novel, whether they need the moment of escape, your books are needed by people, and what we are doing is helping our books get to those people. We have a really good question here. So Marie is a bookseller, and she has a large network of writers that she's gotten to know as a bookseller and blogger, but it's been hard for her to connect with them as a writer. Marie feels like they are used to her in a certain context and they're not taking her seriously as a writer. Lilly, how can Marie get her audience to see her in a new role?
Interesting. You know, I had a little bit of that feeling. I was an editor for a long time before I published my first book. And I definitely had that feeling of like, you surprise, you know, I also do this, even though I always felt primarily like a writer, even though I was kind of more visible as an editor for a long time. But I think that if you just show up and talk about your work and, you know, be present with confidence and, you know, and be visible and be there and talk about your work like an author and not like you're kind of knocking on the door asking to be let in, but like you're already there, you're an author, right? People will follow that, right? And I also think, I suspect that a lot of that feeling is internal, more than writers actually not taking you seriously as one of them, right? I think it's a lot, there's like a self-consciousness in shifting roles, and kind of trying to show up and trying to be a different version of yourself. But my guess is that that's one of those things that are a lot more kind of present and visible to you, and other people are probably not actually thinking that about you at all, and probably will be happy to show up and support you in that work that you've been supporting them in all this time.
I 100% agree that it's much more likely to be what you're feeling on the inside than what's happening on the outside. But I would also give you the same advice that I give writers who are writing about a difficult topic. If you can't hide it, hang bells on it. Now is the time for you to write a blog that is titled From Bookseller to Writer. And give us, you know, this is what I thought it would be like. This is what it's actually like. Give us, here's the information I thought I knew. Here's how I know it's really hard to actually carry out that information. Like, go ahead and publicly announce it. When I was a professional theater director, people used to ask me all the time, ooh, how did you become a director? And it's like, I printed up business cards and handed them to people and said, hello, I am a director. Do you have a play you would like me to direct? You know, I just presented myself as this is who I want to be. You do not need the magic permission fairy to go, now you may call yourself a writer. You need to give yourself your own permission. Lilly, have you seen any major mistakes that people have made, stuff that just made you cringe when you saw someone and they're like, oh, they're trying real hard, but this is not doing it?
Yeah. There is this whole kind of like subset of the literary community, I think, that takes this idea of like, yeah, you have to be visible, you have to be present, you have to kind of push through the discomfort and promote yourself, and takes that to such an extreme that it becomes this like pyramid scheme level snake oil salesperson constantly beating the drum of like, I have something to sell and you should buy it. That just like makes me feel, I'll keep it.
It makes me press the mute button. I use the mute button and the block button because I don't want to see you try to sell me your book 6 times in one day.
Yes. Yeah. Where it's just like, I don't know. And I get it, right? It's like, it comes from this place of like, I fully believe that you have to advocate for your work, right? And if you don't, nobody else is going to, right? And you have to be willing to put yourself out there and let people know that you exist and let people know that you have something to offer. I sometimes I feel like this, if I'm like promoting a book and promoting classes and promoting my editorial services at the same time, I start to feel that feeling of like, I've become a traveling saleswoman, but there's a big difference between that and like I fully reject the idea of like your author brand. You have to be a brand. Like, no, thank you very much. I am a human being. And I happen to have written some books that I would like people to buy. I'm not a fucking brand. And just this idea, I don't know. Yeah, I see people just take it too far, right? And then it's like, if you're spending this much time selling and marketing, do you even still write? Or like if you're this into sales, like why don't you just go get into sales and maybe you can actually make some money. This is not the world to make money in. But yeah, I think people lose sight that like all this stuff is important and is necessary. But it should always first and foremost be about the work, right? We're artists forced to promote ourselves, right? But if you become a salesperson first, then I don't know, you've lost the plot, and I feel like I have nothing to talk to you about.
As we stampede through our last 10 minutes, we have a short question, a longer question. We're also going to be sharing with you some additional resources and some tips on what you can do today to put all of this into action. Hannah asks, in terms of giving back and blurbing fellow authors, what are your thoughts on blurbing for the same author twice? And I suspect maybe Hannah is asking, can I go back to the same person who blurbed me before and ask again?
I think it depends. There's no hard and fast rule about that. I think everybody has their own rubric for that. I will say, with First Love, I went back to two people who had learned my first book. And with both of them, I was like, look, you already supported my first book. No hard feelings at all. If you don't have, if you can't or don't want to or whatever, but like, here's why, these two people just felt so like their work was just so resonant with my work, that I almost was like, oh, I wish I hadn't asked them for the first one because they fit so well for this one, and one of those people was like, hell yeah, whatever, I don't care, I'll do it. I love you, I love your work, I'm happy to blurb you twice. And the other person was like, so sorry, I have a policy against doing that so that I can blurb more people. It's like, cool, fair enough, so I think it's fine to ask as long as you like acknowledge that you're asking, that they've already supported you, and it's fine if they can't, and all that good stuff.
And Hannah clarifies, other actors asking her, she feels hesitant to say yes twice. Dawn points out, it's not pie, you're not going to run out of slices. What I would say is, ask if they want to ask you, they will ask you. If you want to blurb them and you have time and it fits into your life, say yes. If it does not fit into your time, or you don't like the book, or you just don't wanna, for any reason you want, you say, no, sorry, I can't this time.
Yeah, it's fine. I know it's so hard. I hate saying no to blurb requests because I know the anxiety of asking, and I want to support other writers, all this good stuff, but I have to say no sometimes, and so I think people understand that too. And I try to be gracious about it. I try and respond right away and not leave them hanging so they can go ask somebody else and still have that time, but just saying like, I'm so sorry, I don't have the time right now is fine.
Yeah, 100%. And anyone who is genuinely your colleague is not going to be pissed off. They might be disappointed, but that's theirs to deal with. That's not yours to ameliorate. We have two really amazing resource people with us today. Allison Lane is a wonderful PR and marketing person. She's great at helping you develop your book and reach an audience. Allison's going to drop her link, and you may want to follow her on LinkedIn because she does some really lovely LinkedIn lives and articles, lots of information that you never actually have to buy what she's selling, although if you want to, you certainly can. But there is a ton of free information. So Allison, go ahead ahead and drop your link in the chat. We also have Anne Capuzza, who has been a guest on the Writer's Bridge before, who is a total expert on contracts and legal stuff. Anne dropped her email in earlier saying that, hey, if you need contract review, please contact her. I know she does a special offering for the people here in our community. One more question before we get to our top tips of the day. Oh, and I'll also drop again that link to the Dirty, Messy, Alive Writing Summit. It's free. It's coming up next weekend for 4 days. There's an all access pass you can buy, or you can just go for free. Check out all the teachers. We got one more big question here, which is Louise is recognizing the general enshittification of the internet. She feels like Twitter has kind of died for her. Other people are saying they love Substack, they hate Substack. I can't be somewhere with these ethics. I can't be somewhere with those ethics. Lilly, where do you participate online? And is there any place you would especially recommend?
Yeah, I'm going down with the Twitter ship. I've like, Twitter has been so central to my like career and also my social life and just my daily existence for so long at this point. When it first kind of, when Elon took it over, I was like, okay, well, that's the end. And I left for a little while. And then I came back and was like, oh, it's actually not that different. It kind of feels ish the same to me. As long as you use the following tab and not the For You tab. So I'm still on Twitter. I'm also using Instagram more, but Instagram has never come as naturally to me as Twitter. So I have to kind of remind myself to use it. But I'm there as I use that more for making sure that when I have something to share, it goes somewhere where people will see it, but then I also share books and my cats and whatever and other stuff. So it's not just like an advertising billboard. And I'm on Substack. I can only read so many newsletters, but I subscribe to a few. I have a couple paid subscriptions, mostly just the free ones, and that's fine. And yeah, that's where I am. But for now, I don't know. I mean, Twitter, the writing community on Twitter is still pretty strong, even though the algorithm is a lot shittier than it used to be.
Absolutely. And as Kyla points out in the chat, being on a platform that comes easily to her makes it a much more joyful process to post regularly. I am casually on Instagram these days. I kind of want to be more on Instagram because I actually do more what I would qualify as quote unquote real writing on Instagram. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm moderately active on Facebook, primarily in groups. I have my own newsletter, and that to me is the most valuable real estate of all. And I try to make sure I ask questions in my newsletter so that people do engage and respond. As far as the ethics of any one platform goes, I am a Canadian, and Canadians did terrible things to the Native people of Canada. I am an American, and Americans keep immigrant children in cages. I live in Dubai, which is not exactly known as a hotbed of civil rights around the world. We are all participating in a larger oppression, no matter where we are. Some of us are more among the oppressed than among the oppressors, but we are all in some way participants in systems that do things that we do not love. We have to decide for ourselves, does the benefit of being in this place and the good that I personally can do using this tool outweigh the negatives of being part of this system? It is very, very rare to find a clean system. Dig deep enough and almost everything is bad, unfortunately. So what you got to do is you've got to assess for yourself, what are you personally comfortable with? And then do as much good as you can in that area. Lilly, do you have a position on that?
I think that's totally right. Yeah. I mean, so many people taking an ethical stand against Twitter and saying, I'm just going to be on Instagram instead. It's like, well,
we have news for you about Meta. We have news.
Yeah. I hate to break it to you, but that's not any better. And so, yeah, I agree. we all use, I mean, I have a fucking iPhone. I wear sneakers that were not made in ethical factories in the US, right? And I mean, I don't think that the fact that there's no ethical consumption lets you off the hook entirely, right? Like I buy local produce at my farmer's market, and I don't eat meat, right? And I take those stands where I can, but that feels like a kind of an arbitrary line to draw for me. And I think people draw that line just because Elon is actually present on Twitter being an asshole. And Mark Zuckerberg mostly, more keeps to himself, but they all suck. But we need the tools at our disposal. So yeah.
Yeah. You can use a hammer to do something negative. You can use a hammer to build something beautiful. It is what it is. As we always do at the end of our time on the Writer's Bridge, we want to give you our top tips for what you can do today to start building or continue building or elevate your literary community. Lilly, what's your top tip for what we can do today to move forward in building literary community?
Yeah, I mean, we talked so much about these particular things that I think, like, if everybody who's in this Zoom room logged off and went and posted somewhere, right, on their variously ethical platform of choice about a book or an essay that they read recently that they loved and tagged the author, that would be a big, wave of community building, positive energy.
Love it. Absolutely love it. My top tip today is to listen to that tiny little voice in your heart that says, I want to interact, I want to reach out, and honor that impulse when it comes. Because the more you practice honoring that impulse, the more naturally and beautifully it will come to you. You guys are an amazing community. I am so privileged to have been able to spend the past 4 years, and I'm looking forward to more time with all of you. This is something that is beautiful that we get to create together and that you help create by being here. So I want to encourage all of you, please do go ahead and share yourself, share your thoughts, share everything with the people around you, because you will gradually find out what is the best way for you to share what you love with the world. I want to thank our guest, Lilly Dancyger. Her books are First Love and Negative Space. Please check them out. They are amazing. Get on her newsletter. She teaches some incredible classes. She's a brilliant essay editor. Please feel free to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. It is always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lilly and Allison.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Such an active day. Oh my gosh.
Back into the new,
like
back
all
into the
OGs, right?
It really
like
is
everybody's
a lot
coming
of us
back
today
for the reunion.
Kind of nice. It's kind of nice.
I know.
Dave, I got your books. My mom brought them up from Florida. I'm really enjoying checking them out. Lilly, thank you for being here today. You are so incredible.
Thanks, Allison. This was fun. Appreciate it.
Good. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Allison. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Normally, I would hang out longer, but I have to go teach the rest of a retreat this afternoon. We have books to diagram on dramatic structures on the wall. We got big sheets of paper up. So thank you. Lilly, thank you so much. Allison Lane, thank you. Ann Kafuza, thank you. Thank you, everybody who contributed. You guys are
Allison K
amazing.
Williams.
Thank you. Happy writing.
Happy
Thank
writing.
you. Bye.
Bye.